Let's check in now on the latest business news, and for that we're joined in studio by Stephen Carroll. Stephen, we're going to start with some big names in technology who are objecting to EU ideas of tax spearheaded by none other than France.
That's right, this includes the head of Spotify, of Booking.com and of the maker of Angry Birds, Rovio. Now, they've written to EU finance ministers urging them to abandon plans for a levy on their sector. The details of the letter being reported by the Financial Times today. Now, in it, technology bosses say the plans for a tax would unfairly punish European companies in the sector. The proposed 3% levy, the executives say, would deprive them of the capital they need to reinvest in their growth. The European Commission unveiled plans for the tax earlier this year. It would apply to companies with worldwide revenues of at least €750 million and European earnings of more than 50 million. Bringing in such a measure would require the approval of all member states, though. France is pushing for its implementation by the end of the year, but are facing resistance from countries including Ireland and Finland. Well, that news coming as the UK announced it will press ahead with its plans to tax major internet giants. The 2% charge will be applied from 2020. It's estimated it will raise the equivalent of around €450 million a year, the measure announced during the UK budget.
This will be a narrowly targeted tax on the UK-generated revenues of specific digital platform business models. It will be carefully designed to ensure it is established tech giants, rather than our tech startups, that shoulder the burden of this new tax.
Let's take a look at the stock markets for you next. European shares starting the day in the green. A couple of companies reporting we're keeping an eye on for you. Volkswagen among them, their shares up over 4% after their latest results. That's despite their profits falling by almost a fifth in the third quarter, but they were better than had been expected. So that's listed, of course, on the Frankfurt DAX. In London, the oil company BP, their shares also starting the day up 3% at the open. Their profits doubling thanks to higher oil prices. Bit more tumultuous on the Asian stock markets today. We had shares starting in the red but bouncing back as the day went on, helped by efforts by the Chinese authorities to stabilise the markets. Just the Hang Seng in Hong Kong there, still in the red, down around 0.75%. Well, the French economy grew by less than had been expected in the 3 months to the end of September. GDP expanded by 0.4%. Now, that's double the rate of the previous quarter, but still below economists' estimates. Consumer spending and business investment helping to drive growth. Things will need to pick up before the end of the year, though, for the government to reach its annual growth target of 1.7%. To Cuba next, which is making a push for more foreign investment after relations with the United States soured. The country's holding its annual international trade fair on the outskirts of Havana. The government there trying to boost investment from its current level of hundreds of millions of dollars a year to $2.5 billion annually. Georgina Robertson has the story.
It may have been running for over 30 years, but the first Cuban trade fair in the post-Castro Cuba is not the easiest. 3 years ago, the fair was a celebration of warming relations between the then US administration and Cuba, but these relations have chilled under President Trump. Speeches at the trade fair tried to remain buoyant.
It is remarkable that despite the toughening of the financial and trade embargoes against our country and the continuing regression of bilateral relationships due to the position taken by the current administration in the U.S., we continue to have companies participating from the United States who recognize the value of having ties to Cuban companies.
The range of stands showcasing cigars, rum, and much more, but the exhibitors have noticed the shift.
But it's not the same intensity as it was 2 years ago. They're simply, Cuba's ability to buy is somewhat more limited, and that has cooled off the commercial relationship to a degree as well.
According to the Cuban government, combined exports and imports fell around 25% from 2013 through to 2017. 2018 is looking bleak too. Between January and August, agricultural and food product exports from the US to Cuba fell nearly 9%. The US is not the only factor in the Caribbean islands' struggles. The Cuban government have announced a poor sugar harvest, but more importantly, the crisis in Venezuela has isolated Cuba from one of its closest allies and trading partners.
Finally, for me, Elon Musk has announced that he is now the nothing of Tesla. The electric car maker's founder tweeted that he had deleted his titles at the company to see what would happen. Seems fine so far, was his first impressions. Now, he followed up with a second tweet saying that he'll have to keep one title or it will confuse the authorities. This was after Musk was told by US regulators to give up his title of chairman because of a tweet which they had ruled misled investors. He tweeted about taking the company private. Now, apparently in these tweets, Elon Musk was referring to deleting his titles on the Tesla website. The company has yet to make any formal announcement about changes to his current roles of chairman and CEO. Eve.
OK, I'm sure you'll keep us up to date, Stephen. Thanks a lot for that, Stephen Carroll there with our business news.